What's up, YouTube? If I yawn like 10 times in the recording of this video, I apologize ahead of time. But it is super early. And I realized, like, oh, I got to do the voiceover for this league because I need to have this league out today. And yeah, so we're just going to roll with it. We're still trying to settle this Tamio frog debate. So just kind of like flip-flopping back and forth until one or the other feels like definitively more comfortable. Like we had that really good 5-0, 10-0 league with the frog, but we barely cast the frog. We've had like some 4-1 leagues with Tamio, plus some trophy leagues with Tamio. And there were spots where Tamio looked fantastic. If the meta is shifting more towards Boros energy, which I've seen like an extreme uptick in Boros energy, then Tamio is not as good in that matchup. I 100% admit that, but I don't think Frog is good in that matchup either. So might have to find a tertiary option if that's the case to kind of fight that meta. But we're still like working around with a few numbers here and there. So really, like I said, Boros energy being the uptick is a lot of the reason behind some of the decisions here in this list, and I'll kind of go over them. The 12 cantrips have been pretty stock for me. The 4 Bauble, 4 Wraith, 4 Preordain. If you're really, really afraid of Boros energy, then you could always cut the 4 Wraith. Try to go a little bit more conservative with your life total. But I don't like the way not having Wraith makes Shadow less consistent, makes Nethergoyf less consistent, makes Tamio less consistent. So I'm kind of sticking with the Wraith for now. The 11 threats, the 4 Shadow, 4 Nethergoyf, technically the 4 Street Wraith, but I count them more as draw spells than threats when your land counts this light. 4 Shadow, 4 Nethergoyf, 3 Tamio. Usually I'm just like swapping out Tamio and Frog 1 for 1 during testing, but it might be the case that if I go more on like Frog, I need to cut the Wraiths, go a little bit more interactive, let the Frog try to do its thing of drawing a couple cards. 4 Thoughtseize, 4 Push. You notice this cheeky little Blood Chief's Thirst in here. I just wanted another 1 mana removal spell, and Blood Chief's Thirst happens to have the upside of being able to kill a flip to Johnny, which is a non-zero consideration. Still hits everything that Fatal Push would hit. You can kick it to take out like a Murktide Regen or a Scion of Draco or something like that. But does hit all the stuff in Boros, which is really where it's keyed in for. A single Dismember, 4 copies of Counterspell, 2 Drown in the Lock, Force Negation. I've still been really impressed with Force Negation. I think it's super good with both Tamio and the Frog. Just being able to deploy your stuff out like when you want to deploy it and have up Force to protect on your opponent's turn. And then 2 Stubborn Denial. I think when I was trying out Frog, I went up to a 3rd Stubborn Denial because you can like ditch stuff to the Frog and get it online. So that's kind of cool. In the sideboard, 3 Consign, Flusterstorm, 2 Stern Scolding, 2 Force Negation have been like kind of regular for me. Going back and forth on Harbinger of the Seas, you notice the black fetches and the basic swamp in the main deck to support that. This is the new tech I'm trying out. 2 copies of the Meat Hook Massacre. So if you played Standard and Midnight Hunt, you've probably seen this enchantment, this legendary enchantment. It's X and 2 black. When it enters the battlefield, each creature gets -X, however much you paid into Massacre. And then if a creature you control died, so one of my creatures, then your opponent loses 1 life. If a creature your opponent control dies, you gain 1 life. So my thought here is Boros energy being like this really aggressive, get out on the front foot deck. If I'm able to Meat Hook Massacre, like for 3 mana, 2 black and 1, I can kill Ocelot Pride, all the cat tokens, any amped raptors. For 4 mana, I can kill a Johnny's, Guide of Souls, the Fable of the Mirror Breaker token. So, like, basically the entire deck for 4, outside of Flage. And maybe this gains me back a few of those life to kind of stabilize. Like, if you're down at 5 life and you Meat Hook Massacre and kill 5 things, then it's fine if you got a Shadow because you're not gaining up to the 13. But it keeps you from sitting there at 9 and being dead to, like, oh, here's a Guide of Souls into an Amped Raptor into a Flying Guide of Souls, and you're just kind of screwed. Also against decks like Merfolk, aggressive, go wide creature decks, where a little bit of life gain might help you stabilize. I wanted to try it out in those kind of matchups. Did keep in 1 Toxic Deluge and then 2 Soul Guide Lantern. I've been on Nihil Spellbomb, but I thought about trying Soul Guide Lantern just to be able to target down something like Flage, like exile the Flage, keep the rest of the graveyard intact so Drowning Lock's not dead. I have had several instances of Nihil Spellbomb taking out the yard and just shutting down Drowning Lock. And I hate that, so just thought I would give Soul Guide a chance here. So that's what we got here. Let's go ahead and hop into some of the matches to show off to see if we do okay or if we do absolutely terribly. I gotta get used to the Windows Media Player controls because they're a little bit different. They're like Control P or something. I don't know if you can change that. Yeah, Control P. So, game 1 on the play. Pretty good hand. Couple fetches. We got a tomato. We got another Goyf. We'll just play out the Tameo, because if our opponent does have a removal spell for it, like it makes Shadow and Goyf better. But they have Archive Traps, Surgical our Shadows. Okay. Shocking Watery Grave, no Crab would make me assume Fatal Push. So let's go ahead and attack first. So this was really heads up by my opponent. Let me go through this. They waited for the Tameo trigger. So what my opponent could have done is I go like cycle Street Wraith. They let it resolve. Go to crack my clue. And they could Fatal Push. And I could respond with cycle Street Wraith. Draw a card. Or in this case, like cycle my second Street Wraith. And if they respond to me cycling the Street Wraith, I can crack the clue, draw a card, flip the Tameo. What they did was wait for the Tameo trigger to go on the stack and then go for the Fatal Push so that if I draw another card, it doesn't put that ability on the stack again. Like I've already drawn the 3rd card to activate the Tameo. And now, like, for better or worse, this is Tameo. So they do have the Fatal Push. I could save it, but I kind of like the idea of just getting down 2, 5, 6 Nether Goyfs here and really putting a big clock on my opponent. Got a Murderous Cut for one of them. Crack in for 5, and instead of holding up the counter spell, just going to replay the Nether Goyf. That way, if my opponent takes their turn off for something like Tasha's Hideous Laughter, we just get to hit them for 10 and then go to the next turn holding up counterspell. Plus, it kind of insulates me a little bit against something like the Draw 3 Visions of Beyond. Because now I don't have 20 cards in my yard. And we're just going to keep the path of hitting my opponent in the face with Nether Goyfs. Now I have 20 cards in the yard. But Can't really do anything about it, so hold the course, hold up counterspell, hope it's good enough. Woo. Had to blow my nose. Hopefully that didn't come through on camera. Okay, before we get too far into this one, let's go over sideboarding. So, against the mill deck, Tamiyo, not so great. Mainly because, like, ulting Tamiyo doesn't matter in this matchup. If I've got 15 cards in my library and I draw half of them, I'm probably dying. So, ulting Tamiyo, not the goal. And then ended up trimming a Mishra's Bauble because it's a free draw that doesn't really, like, enable more of the deck. Doesn't, like, help Shadow get online. And I ended up bringing in Flusterstorm and what else? Flusterstorm and something. We'll figure it out. So, Crab, we've got a couple Fatal Pushes. And go ahead and knock that out of the way. I don't want to fetch on my turn if I don't have to, just because of Archive Trap. Or, like, I don't want to fetch right there if I don't have to because of Archive Trap. Second Crab, which is okay because we have second Fatal Push. We draw this Force Negation, so let me go over sequencing a little bit. I'm playing the Nethergoyf on my turn because obviously I need to play it on my turn. And then I'm going for the Fetch Fatal Push on their upkeep. The reason for this is if they have something like a Drown in the Lock, I can Force Negation where I wouldn't be able to Force Negation on my turn. If they have an Archive Trap or something, again, I get to force that instead of if they do it on my turn, I don't have the mana for Force. I don't think they're running Force Negation themselves, but most of their deck kind of unlocks at 3 mana, so I'm thinking I can get away with Fatal Push on their upkeep, hold up Force for something big and impactful. I was not really expecting them to have a Shieldred's Edict here, but I'll force that because it lets me clear out the board on their side, more than likely takes up their entire turn, and now I just have a Nethergoyf plus, like, some mana on my turn. Take a counterspell, put a Shadow on top. Okay, so I've got a Shadow on top of my library that I just shuffled away for this counterspell. My opponent's got 3 cards in hand. Realistically, I should just let this Crab go. I don't care about this Crab. It's like less impactful than the other mill options that they have. And I've got a 3-turn clock with Nethergoyf, so they're going to have to chump block really, really quickly. But I don't let it go, and their backup cards an Ensnaring Bridge. So I'll cut to the chase here pretty quickly. I've got 2 copies of Sink into Stupor in my deck, so I would have to, like, find one of those, bounce the bridge. We go draw go for a long time. Like, they play out lands and stuff. They find a second copy of Bridge. I find a Sink into Stupor, bounce the bridge, Thoughtseize it out of the hand, and then they mill over my second copy of Sink into Stupor, so I have no more ways of dealing with Ensnaring Bridge, and that's how game 2 ends. But I might as well just, like, skip past that because it's really, really boring for a really, really long time. Alright, game 3, Nethergoyf, Tamiyo, Stubborn Denial. Not much else I can say. I could, like, Tamiyo, second Tamiyo, kill the first one with the legendary rule if I really wanted to try to get him for 2, but we're just gonna Put the pressure on. If opponent mills us, it's going to grow these Nethergoyfs pretty good, pretty quick. Which, as such, Soul Guide Lantern pretty good, because now they can shrink the Nethergoyfs if possible. So I was actually really surprised when they blocked here and didn't use the Soul Guide Lantern. But either way, I get to flip a tomato. Decide to not play out the sink into stupor, because this was a really tough decision, actually. So I decided not to play out the sink into stupor because I wanted to hold it in case I needed it for ensnaring bridge. Now, if they play a bridge on turn 3, I can soft stub. So even if they like crack the Soul Guide, nuke my Nethergoyfs, I still like force spike a bridge here. And if I get to next turn and then I need to play out the sink into stupor, I can. So that's kind of like my thought process here, is hold it for bridge. I can soft stub a bridge if I need to, so I don't have to have the life loss now. But then opponent plays an engineered explosives, and that was not on my radar. I don't know if I've seen crabs with explosives in your Ruin Crab Soul Guide Lantern deck before, but obviously in the face of Shadow, Nethergoyf, Tameo, it looks pretty good. So I kind of tank for a bit here, like really not sure what to do. End up deciding to Stubborn Denial, because if my opponent cracks the Soul Guide Lantern, then yeah, they shrink the Nethergoyfs, but I get to I get to stop them from being able to play and crack this EE this turn. I add instant back into the yard for Nethergoyf purposes, so I would be up to 1/2 Nethergoyfs, 3/3 Shadow, Shocking or Bolton Sink into Stupor. I'm up to a 6/6 Shadow and 2/1/1 Nethergoyfs. And maybe I can find something to do, but I can also just like rebuy the Stubborn Denial with Tameo before she dies. And maybe it gives me a backdoor out of like finding another Shadow. So go for the stub. They do end up sacking Soul Guide Lantern, pay the 1. And we draw best possible draw I could ask for. Why is this the best possible draw? Because I have a need to lose life for Shadow. I have a need for card types for Nethergoyf. And I have the ability to protect the way here. So we're going to Thoughtseize our opponent. We see a Sauron's Ransom and like a Shieldred's Edict. I don't care what their other cards are because they're dead. Why are they dead? Because I can Tameo to pick back up the Thoughtseize. Thoughtseize myself, taking the creature Tameo to grow the Nethergoyfs. And then bolt in the Sink into Stupor and attack for 1 over lethal here. Really, really fun line there. So getting to win that game, not only because of Tameo being a planeswalker, but because of Tameo being a creature. And the fact that she doesn't like exile Thoughtseize when she gets it back. Either way, on to round number 2. Opponent reveals Giganta. So I was assuming like Boros energy and then Scalding Tarn. I don't think Boros plays red fetches. I think they're all white fetches, but then they get parlors. So like maybe I don't know. And then realize, oh, it's just Ruby Storm. Unfortunately, the hand that I'm currently dealt is not particularly good against Ruby Storm. We see they have a Ral, which I'm hoping I can convert on some of this removal. So I'll leave them with the Ral, take the Manamorphose. They do Rin's Resolve and find a second Ral, so Not ideal. Not ideal at all. I'm just kind of... I'm trying to save this Drown in the Loch as long as I possibly can. Because the Drown's like my Time Walk card. It's the... Hey, stop you from doing anything that actually kills me this turn card. But all of my others are kind of like stopgaps. They're really good at delaying. They're not really good at like solving the problem. And then seeing double ritual there is like worst possible thing I could see because I know they have a Ral in hand. So when it comes to the rituals, like now my opponent can play a Ral, play a ritual. I respond with the removal spell on the Ral. They can respond with another ritual. And this turn was actually really, really funny. I think it gets cut short, but I will explain what happens. Okay, so it's going to get cut like right after this. My opponent drew a Metamorphose for the turn. So they end up casting Ral, casting Pyretic Ritual, Ral trigger. I go to Dismember. They Desperate Ritual, Ral trigger. So this Desperate Ritual resolves, and they go down to 5 life. They cast a Metamorphose, go down to 3, lose both of those Ral flips. Desperate Ritual, or... Yeah, Metamorphose resolves, Desperate Ritual resolves, Dismember resolves, takes out the Ral. So then Pyretic Ritual resolves, and they're at 7 mana. The 2 rituals, and then the one from the Metamorphose, or the net one from the Metamorphose. And they've got Wish, Glimpse, and Past in Flames with no mana reducer. So my thought was, if they cast Glimpse, I'm countering it. If they cast Past in Flames, I'm letting it go and hoping that they didn't hit another land. Because if they cast Past in Flames and I counter it, and then they cast Glimpse immediately after, because they have 7 mana, I can't beat the chump blockers. So I need to run them out of mana and not let them put more bodies on the board. So they end up casting Past in Flames. I let it go, and then they tap 2 mana to put Metamorphose from their yard onto the stack, and I counterspell that, and they end up scooping the game because they are at 3 life with a Nethergoyf, and they don't have any more mana to cast another spell. Now, obviously, I have to get a little lucky here that they didn't hit a land off the Metamorphose. They ended up winning the flip on the one that ultimately dealt them lethal damage. But yeah, I don't know why Moto does not like replays with Storm. But like I said, they resolved the ritual, went up to 7, cast Past in Flames, went down to 3, cast Metamorphose from the yard for 2, went down to 1 mana, and we countered the Metamorphose. Sideboarding against Storm. Basically just taking out a bunch of removal, bringing in anything that says counter a spell. I don't really like the Consign plan. Like, I know Consign stops Ruby Medallion. And it can counter like a Storm trigger on Grape Shot or Galvanic Relay or something like that. But like your entire deck's really good against Storm. You don't need to play a bunch of mediocre cards or like try to force value for mediocre cards. Alright, so we're going to take everything but a couple Static Prisons because we got a bunch of Thoughtseizes. Now we can play out a Shadow, stub a Static Prison. Maybe Force Negation, the second one, who knows. Go for the prison, we go for the stub. Now they go for the second one, and I could Force Negation it, but I don't want to risk my opponent being able to go off next turn. So I decide to just hold up the Force instead. And if I find some more interaction, I can like sink into Stupor, bounce the Static Prison, get my Shadow back, get an attack in, and then force the Static Prison. if it turns out they can't do anything relevant in the meantime. But we do need to counter a glimpse. Another force. Force, very good. And like next turn, I'll get back to Shadow. So I don't need to do anything reckless here. Get back to Shadow. Still have Force, so I can interact on the stack. If their first card's like a, I don't know, another glimpse or something, I can interact with that. I end up using one of my sinks to get the Ruby Medallion off the board. They go for Orm's Chant. I have to counter that, and then just counter the Pyretic Ritual because it's using up all their mana, and sneak out of there with a win against Storm. I do think Storm is like a really, really fun matchup, and you have to do a lot of thinking about how can I die from here, like what's my opponent's outs, and play around those. Round 3, I'm guessing Boros energy. Again, there's so many builds of this deck that I really don't know like what to consistently be looking for, but Giganta, Sacred Foundry, we're assuming. I could Thoughtseize here. But since Nethergoyf is surviving a Galvanic Discharge or a Flage on their turn, decided to just get the Nethergoyf down. I have been doing a lot to focus on like being more proactive in this matchup. Like if I have to make the choice between sitting back on mana and playing out to the board, I'm trying to get myself to play out to the board more. So, 3 cards to deal with a couple copies of Nethergoyf. End up escaping this Nethergoyf instead of playing out the Shadow because it's a little more mana efficient, just like using up all my mana. So that if I find another way to lose life like this, Shadow can outgrow Galvanic Discharge. Opponent screwed up here by not waiting until after damage to bolt. Instead, they just go for like the lightning bolt inside of combat before damage is dealt. So that gives me a chance to fatal push the reflection. And then still be able to play out a Shadow. And they scoop it up. So I guess they didn't find a way to make energy. I would have gotten back the other Nethergoyf next turn. Sideboarding. Trim a bunch of Street Wraiths. I'm on and off of trying out Harbinger of the Seas in this matchup. I think it can be really good, but it's not like the most difficult thing in the world to play around either. But it can stop Flage really well. Okay, so see Stubborn and Hearse here. Decided to go that route instead of playing out the Nethergoyf because the Goyf would just like die to a Galvanic Discharge. And Stub could at least interact with like an Unstable Amulet, in this case an Unlicensed Hearse, so feels pretty good there. Flage to shoot me in the face, get another energy. We'll have another interesting line coming up here in a second. So I could just go Nethergoyf, Shadow, or something like that and really try to flood the board, which I certainly would not fault anybody to, and I probably should, especially after I just said, oh, I'm trying to flood the board more or play out to the board more against this deck. And I don't think they can actually get Flage back this turn, regardless of what they do. But I end up just like playing the counterspell game. I'm kind of glad that I did. Am I glad? Okay, so this Flage, little bit weird. This is like kind of punishing for not playing out a couple dudes, even though Shadow would have just died to the Flage. So, yeah, I don't regret holding up Counterspell, because in this situation, if they just kill the Shadow with a Galvanic Discharge or another Flage or something, then I'm in a really bad spot. But they cast this Flage, and I have to think, okay, the options are they go at the Nethergoyf, or they go at my face. If they go at the Nethergoyf, like, that's really not that bad for me. They can hit the Nethergoyf if they want to attack him with the guide, give it flying, whatnot. They attack for 3, put me down to 7. And I get to go to my turn, play like Shadow Nethergoyf, pass with Counterspell or something. But then I started thinking, well, what if they Flage me in the face? And they put me down to 7, and then they fly over with guide and hit me down to 4. And now I play out Shadow Nethergoyf. They hit me down to 1, and I'm still not presenting lethal on the crackback. I'd be presenting 16, 12 off the Shadow, 2 off the Nethergoyf, 2 off the other Nethergoyf. So 16 plus the 2 for the Nethergoyf. This upcoming turn's 18, still not lethal. So I decide I have to counter the Flage, not let them fly over, and then I can see about like playing to the board more this next turn, and then just top deck Counterspell, because we're such good gamers and we clearly know what we're doing and how to get lucky in like every possible scenario. Another Guide of Souls is annoying, but giving this flying means they can't get back Flage. Aether Hub can't make red or white. And then Fatal Push. Literally the best possible draw there, because now I can interact with this flying Guide of Souls. Decide to kill it before Felia resolves to prevent them from getting more energy. And now they have a Felia v Counterspell. They go for Blink the Nethergoyf, get in for 2 to try to escape the Flage for lethal. And I'm just sitting here like aggressively clicking Counterspell. Like, put it on the stack. Put it on the stack. I dare you. I dare you. Paid costs. Counterspell that. Move on. Move on to match 4. So winning against Boros always feels really, really good. I was actually doing the data yesterday, and I'm up to a positive win rate against Boros, which I started off like 3-8. Now I'm up to like 11-10 or something. So that's kind of crazy. I don't want another land, so we'll shuffle that away. Thoughtseize because our opponent's on a mold of 5, and I've got Bloodchief's Thirst to deal with the Guide of Souls if they don't do anything crazy. See an Amped Raptor and a Discharge, so really glad I went for the Thoughtseize instead of the Bloodchief's Thirst. Kind of take away their ability to play out to the board very proactively. As long as they don't hit another 2-drop. Which they do not. Take a Shadow, kill off a Guide of Souls. Giganta into the hand. You'd love to see that. Just gonna hold up Drown this turn instead of playing out Thoughtseize in like a 1-1 Shadow, because I don't want my Shadow dying to like a second Discharge. Take a Bolt. And now we're just like hoping that they hit the land for the Giganta, and then I can dismember it, grow Shadow outside of Galvanic Discharge range. And play out Shadow with like Drown and Stub up into an empty board. And boom. And should be able to kind of take over from here. One of those random games where Moto gets a little laggy. I say random. It's like every other game. Let's be real here. Moto is not the smoothest running program in all of computer world. So, last card's a Galvanic Discharge. We know about that. Since I've got this Wraith I can cycle, I don't have to worry about Shadow dying to the Discharge. They end up fetching for me, which is great, because now Shadow's just a 2-turn clock, and I don't have to worry about anything. And on to game 2. So, what I learned from that is Boros Energy, really good matchup if your opponent mulligans to 5. No. Okay. So this was the one I did decide to try out, the Harbingers. We saw round, like the first Boros match, I did not bring in Harbinger. This one I decided to give it a shot, just testing variants. And of course, opponent leads on the basic plane, so Harbinger would have looked terrible anyway. But that first hand had no lands, shipped it back. Second one had a Harbinger, but I'm like way off of that. If I keep the Harbinger and throw back like a Preordain or Soul Guide or something, then I kind of make the hand less likely to find another land. So just throw back the Harbinger. Again, opponent's on a mulligan, so decide to go with the Thoughtseize. We see Ocelot Pride, an Unstable Amulet, Blood Moon. They have an Aether Hub for red mana. We just really need to hit a second land. Preferably a basic. But second land in general would be good. I draw the Stub, which would be amazing into the Blood Moon, because I could just like hold up the Stub, force spike the Blood Moon. But decide if I don't go for the Preordain, like I'm probably not winning if I just sit on my back foot. Because what happens if they see a third land and then don't do anything, and then see a fourth land and then cast Blood Moon? Like, I'm just screwed. So instead, I'm going to try to be proactive. I happen to find the Misty Rainforest, so now I can get basic Island, have Stub, have Preordain. Opponent hits another copy of Blood Moon. And if they don't have a land, then they actually can't produce red, which is really funny. We've got Preordains for days. I could go for another Preordain, try to find a black fetch. But decide, since they missed their land drop last turn, I will hold up Stub this turn. Like, this Guide of Souls isn't doing too much. And if they miss their land again, then I'm in pretty good shape. So that's what happens here. They miss their land again. We get down a Shadow. I decided to just like go overkill on the board, because now one of two options happens. Either they find the third land and they Blood Moon, but I've already got both of my basics and threats down. Or they don't find the third land and can't produce red, so I'm not, neither of my threats die to Galvanic Discharge. Or they find the third land, it's red, they have Galvanic Discharge, and they're able to take out one of my threats and attack in which case I just get to deploy another threat next turn and hold up counter magic. So, like, all roads pretty positive in the camp of just play out dudes here. Worst case scenario, would be if they had like a Felia into turn. And they could flash in Felia, untap, like find a land, attack in, blink, unstable amulet. I don't know, something like that. But they don't, so yay. That puts us at 4-0 playing for the trophy. On the draw, our opponent does mulligan down to 5, I believe. So I'm like, okay, decent hand on the draw. Opponent mulliganed. It thought sees away my counterspell. It's a little unfortunate, but we'll figure it out. We'll regroup. Here's a Nethergoyf. Marionette Apprentice. So assuming some sort of, what's it called? Soul Trader combo. Usually Marionette Apprentice, Soul Trader, like Gravecrawler, and then realize, oh, it's just Yawgmoth. And this is absolute worst case scenario for me because I really cannot beat a Grist. Grist is like the absolute nightmare card for blue-black base Shadow because Drown in the Lock, a lot of times like this, can't hit it on curve. Stubborn Denial doesn't hit it at all. Fatal Push doesn't hit it. Kills off all of our creatures. We're not like a creature-dense deck to begin with, so Grist just kind of like taking out a creature kind of stops everything that we have going on. Now, I draw into Sink into Stupor, so I can like sink the Grist and be able to Drown in the Locket on the way back down. But I do have to find a threat, like, now. ASAP. They keep something on top with Underground Mortuary, so could be a Yawgmoth, could be a Chord of Calling. I do not have the card types necessary to get Nethergoyf back yet. This is also one of the reasons that like running Street Wraith and Bauble is so important, is to be able to get back Nethergoyf a little more consistently. Speaking of Street Wraith and Bauble. Alright. Let me check out. What did I end up exiling? I want to make sure I did this well. So I've got instant land. Alright, so this was my problem exiling. Is I've got one land with Bloodstained Mire, one sorcery with Preordain, one artifact with Mishra's Bauble, and one creature with Street Wraith. And then like 6 instants. So no matter what I do with 5 card types and 4 of them being one-ofs, no matter what I do, I'm going to get back Nethergoyf as a 2/3, which is unfortunate, but I can Stubborn Denial a Chord of Calling for a Yawgmoth if they have a land. So that's what we're rolling with. Instead, they have a Chthonian Nightmare, and they're able to sack and get back a Grist, which, if you noticed, was really difficult for me to deal with the first time around, let alone the second time. And they're just going to go with, like, Nightmare loops. And now we are pretty well in the blender. But can't interact with Nightmare very well. I have to counterspell Yawgmoth, but they can Nightmare next turn, get it back. Yeah. I need this to be like Preordain into Street Wraith into some way to get the token off the board, kill the Grist, but doesn't work out that way. There's Nightmare to maybe get back Yawgmoth. Anyway, on to game 2. Like, Grist is atrocious for us. Force coming out, Stub coming out, some Street Wraiths coming out. Bringing in Stern Scolding, Soul Guide Lanterns. Anything I can do to interact with or interact early. Held up Stern Scolding that turn so that I could fight over a Delighted Halfling. Because if a Halfling resolved, then my Stern Scoldings, my counter spells kind of become useless. So needed to be able to fight over that. If I had a spot removal spell, then I would have gone for the turn 1 Preordain. But clearly that was not the case. Then here I could have gone for Thoughtseize Shadow, but my fear was if my opponent has a Veil of Summer, then it just kind of stifles my entire turn. And I would really like to interact with something like this Grist. Counterspell instead of Stern Scolding so that I can Thoughtseize, Double Shadow, and hold up interaction next turn. And then let's talk about this. This is 100% on me, like a 75-yard, tall, towering, coffin corner spiral punt. I'm looking at this hand, and first off, don't care about Bowmaster in the slightest. Like, Bowmaster does nothing. I can start Scolding if I want to, but I'm probably not anyway. Fatal Push is annoying, but I do have just like triple threat. If they deal with one of them, I still have a really good clock. Don't think Fatal Push matters. Nightmare is the card I cannot currently deal with. And if they do something like Nightmare plus Bowmaster and get back Grist, you saw it game 1, the card kind of takes over. So take the Nightmare, leave him with the push. Bowmaster doesn't matter. I've got Stern Scolding for like another Grist or a Yawgmoth or something like that. Or monumentally punt and take the Fatal Push and think, okay, well, I'll just play out like Double Shadow here. They'll get the Nightmare. I can Stern Scolding the Bowmaster, and I'll just kill them in like 2 turns. And even if they do get down the Bowmaster and get back the Grist, they're still just killing one thing. Because like Bowmaster token, Nightmare away the token, get back the Grist, sack the Bowmaster, kill something. That's fine. If they don't do that, if they tick up the Grist, then I'm just swinging in with like Double Shadow and another Goyf, and the game's over anyway. So play out our Double Shadow, pass the turn. They go for the Nightmare, resolves. They go for the Bowman, does not resolve. And I even draw the fetch land here. So now I'm like, okay, nice. I put them down to 2. I play out another Goyf. GLHF. 2 of their 3 cards are completely dead. Yawgmoth. So, Undying Threat that lets them potentially get back like a Bowmaster or Grist in this case. Make a dude. Grist takes over double Grist. Grist tick up, flip over double Grist. So their 1 token becomes 3 tokens. They get to get back the Bowmaster again. Nightmare. They could get back another Grist if they wanted to, but there's like no reason because you just have a Grist on 6 loyalty threatening ult next turn. And now my only outs are Meat Hook Massacre or Toxic Deluge, which we hit neither of those. So again, monster punt on my end. I think opponent like attacks and Nightmares back a Bowmaster, whatever. Monster punt on my end. All I had to do is take the Nightmare and just got full of myself like, oh, the worst won't possibly happen. My opponent won't Grist into double Grist flip over. No, it's fine. Ah. Alright. So let's talk about the deck. Tamiyo, we did win a game with Tamiyo against Mill because Tamiyo. We did see Boros Energy twice that I'm still convinced is like not a good matchup for Frog. It's not good for Tamiyo either, but it's not good for Frog. Storm is a good Frog matchup. Oh, this is like one of the points I really want to emphasize is I keep trying to ask people in various Discords and things like, what matchups is Frog good in? Not just when his Frog looked good or like what does Frog do that's good? Like what matchups specifically is Frog good in? And usually people will say like, oh, Frog's good against Storm because you get to attack in and they're not interacting. And like, well, Blue-Black Shadow is good against Storm. Frog doesn't really matter. Entire deck good against Storm. What else? Well, it's good against Tron. Okay, that's a positive. Plays through Chalice. Attacks through a lot of the Eldrazi, especially if you can ditch some stuff. Maybe fly over. That's cool. What else? Well, Frog's good if your opponent's not playing creatures and they're not interacting. Okay, so like Frog's good in the really good Blue-Black Shadow matchups. But you get the idea. Just trying to like narrow down, hey, when is this card something that I actively want versus when is this like some just generic threat that carries on the Blue-Black Shadow ideal. Still not getting strong answers on that. Still trying to figure it out. But beside the point, Tamiyo, like I said, did see the win against Mill. Pretty cool there. Force looked great. Counterspell. Drown in the Lock. I still think it's like a necessary evil. I wish I had something better, but there's just nothing that's like as modally impactful as Drown in the Lock is. Bloodchief's Thirst looked fine. Sideboard. Didn't get to play Harbinger. Didn't get to play Meat Hook or Toxic Deluge. I cannot express to you how bad my luck seems to be with sweeper effects out of the sideboard. Like I saw 3 matches there. 2 Boros Energy and a Yawgmoth. That seeing a Meat Hook Massacre or a Toxic Deluge would have been huge. Never saw one in 3 or 4 post-board games. Never saw a single sweeper. So your guess is as good as mine on that front. Otherwise, Consign good, Flusterstorm good. I've actually been disappointed with Stern Scolding. I think it's kind of a necessary evil, but I don't know. It's just like not hitting what I really want to hit when I want to hit it. When I want to hit it. So I'm questioning that one. Soul Guide Lantern, I did think is good though. I had a couple leagues off stream where I was able to like Soul Guide specifically a Flage. I did have a loss where I knew my opponent had a Flage off of Thoughtseize, and they top decked a Fable of the Mirror Breaker, and I had to play out Soul Guide after they played the Fable and just like nuke their yard, because if they went to their turn, discarded the Fable, drew their cards, then they'd be able to immediately just escape the Flage, and there's nothing I could do about it. They already had like their 4th untapped land in hand, so just nothing I could do about it. And they went to their turn, and like I had popped the Soul Guide, they discarded the Flage that turn, drew some stuff, and then ended up just getting back the Flage like a turn later, and it ran away with the game. And all I could think was like, man, Soul Guide wouldn't have done anything, Nihil Spellbomb wouldn't have done anything. Was I just kind of screwed in that spot? But either way, still having fun testing out Dimir. I think it's my favorite Shadow combination at the moment. I think it's showing the most consistency, so hopefully if you're trying it out soon, or if you've already tried it out, it's giving you some similar thoughts and vibes. If you have other recommendations for threats outside of Tamiyo and Frog, I would be happy to hear those out. I thought about trying some Murktides, but the one time I tried Nethergoyf and Gurmag Angler, the Gurmag did actively hinder the Nethergoyf, and that didn't care about card types. I think Murktide actually caring about card types is a very big detriment. And I know people are going to say, like, oh, try out Null Drift or Dress Down. That's bad. Try out Frog and Murktide. And the Frog Murktide package, I think, is like this number 2 option to me behind Nethergoyf and Tamiyo. But I think you're like really underestimating how many games Nethergoyf runs away with. But I might try out some more Frog Murktide in the near future. See if I can come up with any sort of consensus to what feels best to me. But otherwise, thank you all so much for checking out the video. Always appreciate it. As always, the deck list will be in the description below, or the current Dimir deck list. I usually don't post the exact list that I have in the video. I post whatever I would take to a tournament right now if I had something to play. And then link to the Twitter in case you want to know when a stream's going live, so you can come check us out. A link to the Discord, so you can hop on over there. Hop on over. That's like the 17th time I've made that pun in the last 3 days. It's a Psychic Frog pun. If you want to hop over there, talk about Shadow, non-Shadow, anything you're seeing in Modern, what's working, not working, always happy to have you. Otherwise, oh, and link to the Twitch in case you want to see the live streams. Otherwise, hope everybody has a fantastic rest of your week. Stay safe, enjoy some good food and company, and I will catch y'all back live later. Adios for now.